Namaskaram, Michael.
Namaskaram.
So for the sake of devotees who are new to Bhagwan, could you please explain the goal of human birth? I'll start by Bhagwan.
The goal taught by Bhagavan is the goal that we are all seeking, namely happiness. The one thing that drives all the efforts we make is that we are seeking happiness. We may be seeking happiness in so many different, in so many different places, through so many different means, through so many different endeavors, but ultimately all our efforts are efforts to experience happiness. And what drives this desire for happiness is our real nature. Our real nature is infinite happiness and is also love for infinite happiness. Because we have, when we rise as ego, we identify ourselves as, we experience ourselves as if we were a person. And a person is limited in time, space, and in so many other respects. As a person, we are limited. So as this limited person, we cannot experience infinite happiness, which is our real nature. So as ego, we are always dissatisfied. We are always seeking something. Whatever we achieve, whatever we gain, nothing satisfies us, because the satisfaction we are seeking is infinite satisfaction. That satisfaction and happiness are more or less synonymous terms in this context. So what we are seeking is infinite happiness, infinite satisfaction, and nothing less than infinite satisfaction will satisfy us. Infinite satisfaction means it is also eternal. In order to be infinite, it must be eternal. So we are seeking the happiness which is ever present. That is the happiness which is our real nature. This is expressed very clearly and beautifully by Bhagavan in the first paragraph of Nana. When originally Nana was Bhagavan's answers to questions asked by Shiva Prakashan Pillai. And it was published in several different question and answer forms. But Bhagavan, after a few years after it was first published, Bhagavan rewrote it as an essay. And when he rewrote it as an essay, he added the first paragraph, which wasn't part of his original answers to Shiva Prakashan Pillai, but it summarizes the whole of his teachings in just 2 sentences. One is a somewhat long sentence, and then the second one is a shorter sentence. What he says in the first sentence is, Sakala jivagalum dukamem vadindri epodum sukumai iraka virumbadalam. That means, since all living beings want or like to be always happy without what is called misery, yavakum tan iditileye parama priyam irpadalam, since for everyone the greatest love is only for oneself, priyatuku sukame karanamadalam, since happiness alone is the cause of love, manamatra nidrayal dinam anubhavikam tan subhavamana achukate adeya tanne tan aridal vendum. In order to obtain that happiness, which is one's own nature, which one experiences daily in sleep, which is devoid of mind, knowing oneself is necessary. What Bhagavan says here is Bhagavan is making logical connections here, drawing logical connections. He starts with the first premise he starts with, which is an indisputable premise. We are all living beings, all sentient beings, that is, all sentient beings want to be happy want to be always happy without what is called misery. That is, we want unalloyed happiness. That is what we are all seeking through whatever efforts we are making. What we are seeking is unalloyed happiness. So that's the first premise. The second premise is, since for everyone the greatest love is only for oneself, that is, among all the things that we love in this world, but what we love more than anything else is ourselves. If we love, we love other people, we may love certain things, certain experiences, but all our love for anything other than ourselves is centered around our love for ourselves. We love our friends, our family, our husband, wife, whatever, because they contribute to our happiness. If someone we formerly loved was constantly giving us trouble and constantly causing us misery, our love for them would naturally wane, because we love ourselves and we want ourselves to be happy. A happy relationship is a relationship where both people where each person makes the other happy. So it is we all have the greatest love for ourselves, and that is what is behind our love for all other things. We love those things that contribute to our happiness, and we dislike those things which detract from our happiness or cause us misery. So that's the second premise. The third premise, he says, is, since happiness alone is the cause for love, this is a very, very important principle. Whatever we love it because of the happiness we think we derive from it. So what is the logical connection between that and the previous thing? Since we all have greatest love for ourselves, and since happiness alone is the cause for love, what that implies is, but why do we love ourselves? Because we ourselves are happiness. That is, we all, deep down, we all know, we all recognize that happiness is our real nature. That is why we have so much love for ourselves. So those are the first three premises. So those are since clauses. In the remaining part of the sentence, there are other premises given, but they're not given explicitly as premises, they're implied premises. What he says in the remaining part of the sentence, in order to obtain that happiness, which is one's own nature. Why is that happiness one's own nature? Because we all want to be happy, we all have greatest love for ourselves, and happiness alone is the cause of love. Therefore, happiness is our real nature. So he's drawing an inference here. And then he says that happiness, which is one's own real nature, then he adds in another premise to reinforce the argument. One's own nature, which one experiences daily in dreamless sleep. That is, we experience dissatisfaction, we experience misery, suffering, only in waking and dream. In sleep, we are perfectly contented, perfectly satisfied, perfectly happy. So we experience that infinite happiness, which is our real nature, every day in sleep. Sleep here means dreamless sleep. That's not in dream. Dream is just dream and waking are the same. They are both states where we experience a mixture of pleasure and pain, happiness and misery, satisfaction and dissatisfaction. But in sleep, we experience only satisfaction, only happiness. Why is the fact that we experience happiness in sleep so significant? That is implied in the next clause, which is devoid of mind. That is, in sleep, there is no mind, no ego. What exists in sleep is only our own real nature. So since we experience happiness in sleep, And since there's no mind, and in the absence of mind, there's no world, there's no phenomena, there's nothing. It's just the basic awareness of our own existence. That's all that exists in sleep. Basic awareness, I am. And since we're perfectly happy in that state where we're aware only of ourselves as I am, that means happiness is our real nature. It is when everything else, when mind and all phenomena are removed, what remains is perfect happiness. So happiness is our real nature. That is the implication here. So because of this, how are we then to obtain that happiness? If happiness is our real nature, how are we to obtain it? That's what he says in the main clause. Tanne tan aridal vendum. Oneself, knowing oneself is necessary. This is necessary for us to know ourselves. So how are we to know ourselves? The answer he gives in the second and last sentence of this paragraph. He says, Adaku nana ennum jnana vicharame mukhya sadhanam. That means for that, jnana vichara, called who am I, alone is the principal means. Jnana vichara, jnana here means awareness. So jnana vichara is awareness investigation. It's an investigation of our own fundamental awareness of our own existence, that fundamental awareness I. Investigating that is what he calls as nana ennum jnana vicharame. Investigation of awareness, that jnana vichara called who am I. That is the principal means. So here in this paragraph, Bhagavan has summarized the core of his whole teachings. This may give rise to many questions, particularly about happiness, because since happiness is our real nature, why are we all seeking happiness outside ourselves? We all know happiness is our real nature. Deep down, we know that. That's why we love ourselves. And we also, after a long day, there's nothing we like more than to go to sleep. We all love sleep. We may in the morning, when we're refreshed, jump out with fresh enthusiasm to experience things of the world, but underlying the deep down, we all have that love for sleep. We all love to sleep because sleep is a state of perfect happiness. But so we do know that happiness, that is, if we think about it, it's quite clear that happiness is our real nature. When everything else is removed in sleep, when there's no mind, we're perfectly happy. So the misery comes only along with mind. Dissatisfaction comes only with mind. Is when we rise as ego, when we're aware of ourselves as a person, when we impose limitations on ourselves, when we see things that seem to be other than ourselves, we are dissatisfied. When we remain just as we really are, as in sleep, we are perfectly satisfied. So infinite satisfaction or happiness is our real nature. But then why do we jump out of sleep so enthusiastically in waking or dream to experience phenomena? Because we wrongly believe that we derive happiness from things other than ourselves. The reason for this is, once we limit ourselves as a body, once we experience ourselves as I am this body, as a body we have so many needs. In order to survive, the body needs food, it needs water, it needs air, and depending on the climate, it needs clothing, it needs shelter, it needs so many things. So as this body, the body has its own needs. So since we experience this body as I, we feel those needs are our needs. And therefore we want food, we want clothing, we want shelter. We also want security because life in a body is dangerous. I mean, as soon as we experience ourselves as a body, anything could happen to this body. We could be, if we were in a jungle, we could be attacked by a wild animal. If we were in a city, we could be hit by a bus or a passing car or something. So many things. The body is as a body, we're always in a state of insecurity. Nothing is secure so long as we experience ourselves as a body. So another thing that we all want is security. We all want, in some form or other, we don't want food just now. We want to be sure we're going to have food tomorrow and the next day and the next day. So because we have that need, because we feel that need for security, we also want to amass possessions. We're not just satisfied with one meal now. We want to be sure we're going to have a meal every day. We want to be sure that the shelter we have now, the home we have now, is going to be our home tomorrow and the next day. So, and in our complex human society, the means to security seems to be money. The more money you have, the more secure you are. If you don't have money, you may be evicted from your house. You may not be able to afford to buy food tomorrow. So money or wealth, material wealth, equates with happiness. So we all have that desire to have more material wealth. So in this way, because of limiting ourselves with this body, we have created needs for ourselves, and therefore we create desire. Because we desire things, take a simple example. If we're hungry, we desire food. When we're given a nice meal, it need not even be the most tasty meal. If we're really hungry, even the simplest food will be tasty for us. If we're hungry and we eat a meal, we feel satisfied. Why do we feel satisfied? Is there happiness in that food when we eat the food? Is the food giving us happiness? No, the happiness we're experiencing, as Bhagavan pointed out, that happiness is actually only from within ourselves. But because we have desire for the food, so long as we're hungry or have any other desire, that agitates our mind. And the more the mind is agitated, the more our real nature is obscured. When we experience, when we achieve what we desire, we are satisfied, and that satisfaction results in a calming of a calming down of the mind. That is, dissatisfaction agitates the mind, satisfaction calms the mind. The calmer the mind, the more our own real nature, which is happiness, shines forth. If for example, just to take an example, if you've got a pond with some object at the bottom, on a nice calm day, you can see it. You can look in the water and you can see the object down at the bottom. But if it's a very stormy day and there are waves and moving the water around, it's very difficult to see what's at the bottom. So the agitation of our mind is what obscures our real nature. The calmer our mind, the more we are aware of our real nature. And what is our real nature? Perfect happiness. So by satisfying our desires, we experience a little bit of the infinite happiness, which is our real nature. So, but because we experience happiness whenever our hunger is satisfied, for example, when we next become hungry, we want to satisfy it again. So we associate happiness with the things that we desire. Because we achieve satisfaction when we get a nice meal, we desire to eat. And in the same way, we desire so many things in this world. But, and when we achieve the things that we desire, we feel satisfaction, we feel happiness. If I desire to be very rich, if I, one day when I wake up and I look in my bank account and see there's $1 million there, I'll be very happy, because that's what I've been seeking to achieve for so long. So as soon as I see it, satisfaction. And I experience, and I think the happiness is coming from that that one followed by 6 zeros in my showing in my bank account. But there's no happiness in that one or in any of the zeros. The happiness is lying only within me. So whatever we desire in this world seems to give us happiness, because when the desire is satisfied, the agitation of the mind is calmed down, and the happiness that is already within us, we experience. Bhagavan gave a very beautiful analogy for this. I think it was an analogy that existed even before Bhagavan, but Bhagavan often used to point out this analogy. That is a little story. A hungry dog once went to a cremation ground and it was looking for a nice tasty bone. It couldn't find any fresh bone. It found only an old dry bone. So it thought, oh, there may be something, some juice left in this bone. So it started chewing on the bone. And because it's an old bone, it splintered and it was cutting inside the dog's mouth. So after chewing it for a while and feeling a bit uncomfortable, the dog dropped the bone. Then it saw the blood on the bone, it licked the blood and thought, oh, this blood is very, very tasty. I must chew this bone some more to get more of this blood from it. And it went on chewing the bone, thinking the blood was coming from the bone, whereas in fact the blood was coming from within itself. Obviously that dog is a foolish dog, but no more foolish than we are, because we are seeking happiness outside ourselves. We think we are deriving happiness from the tasty meal or from the $1 million in our bank account or from whatever else we desire, from sensual pleasures or intellectual pleasures, whatever it is we desire. We think we derive happiness from these things, whereas the happiness that we seem to derive from them is actually coming from within ourselves. So, so we are all seeking happiness, but we are seeking happiness in the wrong place. If we seek happiness in anything other than ourselves, we're seeking it in the wrong place. So that's why Bhagavan says, in order to obtain that happiness, which is one's own nature, which one experiences daily in sleep, which is devoid of mind, oneself knowing oneself is necessary. So according to Bhagavan, the goal of life is just happiness. Some people may object and say, no, my goal is I want to have lots of money, I want to have lots of power, or I want to do good in the world, I want to help people, I want to... We may have so many ideas of what we want from life. Our life may have so many goals. I want to pass my exam. I want to have a happy marriage. I want to have nice children. I want to have a better house. I want to have a better car. We think these are the goals of life. But what we are seeking through all these things is only one thing, which is happiness. So we all have that, the fundamental desire, the desire that fuels all other desires, is our desire for happiness. And where does this desire for happiness come? It is our true nature, because the desire for happiness is nothing but love for ourselves, which is our real nature. And both love and happiness are our real nature. And as Bhagavan says, happiness alone is the cause of love. So we love ourselves because we are happiness. And everything else we love because we love other things to the extent that they seem to contribute to our own happiness. So what we all ultimately, if we think a little deeply about it, what we're all ultimately seeking is happiness. And that the happiness we are seeking is our own nature, and the desire for that happiness, the love for that happiness, that is also our own nature. So desire for happiness is not wrong. The problem is we are seeking happiness in the wrong places. And all the troubles in this world, well, not many of the troubles, there's some troubles that are just caused by the fact that we are limited as a body. And so there are natural disasters and there are coronaviruses and all sorts of things that can put us in danger. But a lot of the troubles we experience in life are troubles caused by human society in one way or another, whether global warming or wealth disparity, some people being very rich, some people being very poor. All these things, what are they all driven by? What are they all caused by? And there are wars, there are all sorts of things, that troubles people give to each other. All these are driven by their desires. And all their desire is driven by desire for happiness. Problem is, the desire for happiness is not wrong. Desiring happiness, thinking that we get happiness from other things is what is wrong. So ultimately, the ultimate solution to all problems is to find the happiness that we are seeking within ourselves, because that is where that is the we ourselves are the sole abode of happiness. There's no happiness in anything else. So if we want to be happy, if we want to free ourselves from all other desires, we have to experience the infinite happiness that is our real nature. So long as we rise as ego, we experience ourselves as a person, we experience limitation, and so we cannot be free of desire. Desire is the very nature of ego. Bhagavan says in verse 25 of Upadesh Undya, Urupatri Undam, Urupatri Nekum, Urupatri Undu Mika Ongum. That is, he's talking about ego here. And he describes ego as Urupatrapeya Handeva, formless phantom ego. And he says this Urupatri Undam, that means grasping form, it comes into existence. Urupatri Nekum, grasping form, it stands. Urupatri Undu Mika Ongum, grasping and feeding on forms, it flourishes. So grasping, that patri, grasping means grasping and being attached, is the very nature of ego. So that grasping is desire, attachment. So we, as ego, we cannot be free of desire and attachment. We can reduce the strength of our desire and attachment, but we cannot be free of it completely. But I'm going a bit ahead of myself now, because now I'm supposed to be answering the question about what is our goal. So in one simple word, or two alternative simple words, what is the goal of our life? Happiness or satisfaction? Call it what you will, it's the same thing. I think the sole goal of our of life.
So, and you did mention ego. Just for clarification, by ego you mean the sense, the wrong sense that one is a finite individual rather than infinite consciousness. Right?
I will talk a bit more about that when you, in reply to your next question.
Okay. Can you please explain the logic behind self-inquiry?
Right. Okay. This practice of self-inquiry or self-investigation, the term Bhagavan, the Sanskrit term Bhagavan used is vichara. The Tamil word term, equivalent Tamil term is natam. Though these are often translated as inquiry, it's inquiry in the sense of investigation, not inquiry in the sense of asking questions. So generally, I prefer to use the term investigation rather than inquiry, because I think it's a more precise term. And also, we can investigate ourselves. We can't inquire ourselves. We have to inquire into ourselves. Or it becomes a bit more complicated when we use either the verb inquire or the noun inquiry. Investigate or investigation is more simple, direct, and more appropriate in this context. So Bhagavan has said that jnana vichara, who am I, is the principal means. Jnana vichara, as I said, that means awareness investigation. And what is the awareness that we have to investigate? It's the awareness I am. That's why he calls it the who am I, the investigation called who am I. That is, we are investigating ourselves to know what we actually are. So this is, jnana vichara is just another name for, another term for atma vichara, which means self-investigation. So what is the logic behind self-investigation? Well, a lot of the logic behind it has been explained by Bhagavan in this first paragraph. But happiness is our real nature, and therefore in order to experience that happiness, which is our real nature, and which we experience daily in deep sleep, which is devoid of mind, we have to know ourselves. And in order to know ourselves, we have to investigate ourselves. If you want to know anything, what's the means of knowing anything? You have to investigate it. How do we investigate ourselves? We investigate ourselves simply by attending to ourselves, by closely observing ourselves, by looking at ourselves to see what we actually are. Looking means, obviously I'm using it here in a metaphorical term, it's not with our eyes, but we are looking, it's with our inner attention that we are looking. So what is the logic behind this? Well, one reason we need, as I say, Bhagavan has one logical reason for investigating ourselves. The principal logical reason is given by Bhagavan in this paragraph, but since happiness is our real nature, in order to experience happiness, we need to know what we actually are. And in order to know what we actually are, we have to investigate ourselves. But don't we already know what we actually are? I know I'm Michael. What more is there to know about me than this? This is where we come down deeper into Bhagavan's where we deal with other core aspects of Bhagavan's teachings. That is, we are all aware of ourselves as I am this body, I am this person called so and so. This awareness, I am this body, though this seems to us to be real. I seem to be this body. The awareness I am this body is so strongly rooted in me. So why should I doubt that I'm this body? Bhagavan points out very simply, we cannot be anything in the absence of which we can exist. So since we can exist in the absence of this body, we're aware of this body in waking. In dream, we're aware of ourselves as some other body. In sleep, we're not aware of ourselves as anybody, but we're aware of ourselves in all three states. Since I am now aware of myself, without being aware of a body that I mistook to be myself in dream, that body cannot be myself. Likewise, since when I'm dreaming, I'm aware of myself without being aware of this body cannot be what I am. Because if this body were actually what I am, I couldn't be aware of myself without being aware of this body. If I and this body were one, if I'm aware of I, then I have to be aware of the body. But since I'm aware of I, since I'm aware of myself in dream without being aware of this body cannot be what I actually am. But then people may say, okay, we may not be this body, but at least we're the mind, because in both, it's the same, though the body in waking and dream may be different, but essentially it's the same mind in waking and dream. So why shouldn't we be the mind? Maybe the mind is what we actually are. That, for the same reason, the mind is not what we actually are, because we experience ourselves as this mind in waking and dream, but in sleep, we don't experience ourselves as this mind. Many people think, oh, but sleep is a state of non-awareness. We're not aware of anything in sleep, so how can we be aware of ourselves as this mind? That is, that also Bhagavan points out, that is not correct. We are aware of ourselves in sleep. If we were, as a simple evidence for the fact, when we wake up, we say, I slept happily. How do we know that we were in a state called sleep and that we were happy in that state called sleep? If we weren't aware in that state. So there was awareness there. What we were not aware of in sleep was any phenomena. And we were not aware of ourselves as this person or as anybody. But we were aware of ourselves just as I am. Supposing that many people find it difficult to grasp this idea that we are aware in sleep, because we are so accustomed to associating awareness with awareness of phenomena. In a state where we're not aware of any phenomena, we seem to be not aware. We think, oh, that's a state of non-awareness. But we are aware of having been in a state in which we were not aware of any phenomena. So how can we be aware of having been in that state if we were not aware in that while we were in that state? So we are not, supposing for argument's sake, but sleep was a state of total non-awareness. There was no awareness at all in sleep. We would only be aware of two states, waking and dream, or alternating one after another. We would not be aware of any gap between successive states of waking and dream. But we are clearly aware of a gap, and that gap is what we call sleep. In waking and dream, we're aware of ourselves as a body, and we're aware of phenomena. But in sleep, we're not aware of ourselves as this body, and we're not aware of any phenomena. So we are aware of a state in which we are not aware of anything. We are aware of having been in a state in which we are not aware of anything. How can we be aware of having been in that state if we were not aware when we were in that state? So we all remember when we wake up, I slept. And if someone asks you to describe sleep, oh, I wasn't aware of anything in sleep, but I was there. We were very confident we were there. So we were there, and we were aware, but we were there, but we were not aware of anything else. So we are aware of having been in a state in which we were not aware of anything. If as I say, if there were no awareness in sleep, we would have no way of knowing that we would have no memory of sleep. We would not be aware of any gap between successive states of waking and dream. But we are very clearly aware that there's a gap. Why? Because we were aware in that gap. What were we aware of? We weren't aware of anything. We were just aware. That we weren't aware of any object, any phenomena. We were just aware, I am. That's all. So since we are aware of ourselves in sleep, without being aware of this body or mind, neither this body or mind can be what we actually are. In sleep, we were not aware of any phenomena, so no phenomena can be what we actually are. So what are we? We are only that fundamental awareness of our own existence, which is what alone remains in sleep. And what is the nature of that awareness? Infinite happiness, as Bhagavan pointed out in that first paragraph, because that's why we are very happy to go to sleep, and we feel refreshed when we wake up, because sleep is a state of perfect satisfaction. That satisfaction, the satisfaction that we experience in sleep, is what re-energizes us. Is what charges our batteries, so to speak, and it enables us to wake up fresh in the morning, all eager to go out and look for happiness in things other than ourselves. Bhagavan proved by simple logical arguments based on our own experience of ourselves that we are not this body and we are not this mind, though we seem to be this body and mind. And that which is aware of itself as I am this body, that is what Bhagavan calls ego. In fact, Bhagavan said ego is nothing but the false awareness, I am this body. But he also clarified that when he talks about body in this context, when he says I am this body, he's not just talking about this physical form, because we never experience just the physical form as I. When we experience this physical form as I, no one has ever experienced a dead body as I. It's always a living body. So there's always life in the body. And nobody has experienced a sleeping body as I. It's only a body which is awake. That means a body in which the mind, intellect, and will are functioning. So these five things, the physical form of this body, the life that is animating it, the mind, the intellect, and the will, these are called five sheaths, panchakosha. These five sheaths, Bhagavan says in Ulladu verse 5, Uru panchakosha uru. The body is a form composed of five sheaths. All the five are, therefore all the five are included in the term body. So when Bhagavan talks about ego being I am this, the awareness I am this body, he's not just talking about this physical body, he's talking about the whole package, the whole person. There's all these five sheaths. Because we never experience one without the other four. And since we experience the whole set of them as I, they are, in effect, they're one package. Though we can distinguish physical body is something, life is something, mind is something, intellect is something, will is something. We can distinguish them, but our experience of them, but they are all I. And I is one, so we experience them as if as one. So this awareness of ourself as I am this body, this is ego. But this is not a correct awareness of ourself. It's an awareness of ourself as something other than what we actually are. So since we are now aware of ourselves as something other than what we actually are, we need to be aware of ourselves as we actually are. And since happiness is our real nature, why are we not experiencing the happiness that is our real nature now? Because we're aware of ourselves as something other than that. We're aware of ourselves as this body, not as happiness. So happiness seems to be something other than ourselves. Though happiness is what we actually are, and this body is something other than ourselves, we got it the wrong way around. So knowing ourselves is necessary. This is the logic behind self-investigation. This is why we need to investigate ourselves. We need to investigate ourselves in order to experience ourselves as we actually are, and thereby to experience infinite happiness, which is our real nature.
Thank you, Michael. So that explains the logic behind self-inquiry. Now, how does one practice self-inquiry? So if someone just watches this video and he wants to go out and get started, he wants to start practicing self-inquiry, could you make it as simple as possible so that at least I know there's a lot to learn, but maybe this will help them get going.
There isn't actually a lot to learn. It's extremely simple. If we want to know something, if I give you a book and ask you what is written in this book, how do you find out what is written in the book? You open the book and read it. So it is by attending to what is in the book, you find out what is in it. So the basic tool of any investigation is attention. When scientists investigate phenomena in the world, they may use so many instruments as aids to their investigation. And because the phenomena they're investigating are things outside this body, they need the five senses, or some of the five, at least one or two of the five senses, to observe the things outside. So to know anything other than ourselves, tools such as the five senses, or scientific instruments, or glasses, or binoculars, or telescopes, or microscopes, or hearing aids, or we need so many instruments we depend upon instruments to know things other than ourselves. Even to know the thoughts in our mind, we need the instrument called mind. To know anything other than ourselves, we need instruments. But what the basic tool of any investigation is the power of attention or observation. All the scientific equipment, all the equipment that scientists use to investigate things would be useless if there wasn't a scientist there to read the results. The results may come out as a graph or as a picture, or they may come out in so many forms. It is the scientist who then observes that and interprets it. So to know anything, the power of attention or observation is required. To know anything other than ourselves, other things instruments are required to know, because we know other things through the mind, the senses, and through various other instruments. To know ourselves, no instrument is necessary. All we need is our simple attention. Now we are attending to things other than ourselves. From the time we wake up in the morning to the time we go to sleep at night, our attention is dwelling on things other than ourselves. Other than ourselves includes even this body, even this mind, even the thoughts. They're all other than ourselves. Because what we are is just a basic awareness. We are that which is aware of all these things. So we have to turn our attention away from objects back to the subject, away from things perceived back to the perceiver, away from what is seen to the seer, away from what is known to the knower, away from what is heard to the hearer. So that is turning our attention back towards ourselves. For many people, when this is first explained, when they sit down and try to put it into practice, it seems to be a little bit difficult, because our power of attention has become very gross, a very crude instrument, because we are constantly attending to phenomena, and phenomena are gross. Compared to the subject, objects are gross. So when we try to attend to the subject, for many people, it seems that, oh, it's very difficult. What am I to attend to? Where am I to attend to it? They ask so many things because they are looking, they associate attention with attention to objects. And obviously we ourselves are not an object. We are not anything other than ourselves. So how do we attend to ourselves? Though we are not an object, we can attend to ourselves. Why? Because we can attend to anything that we are aware of. And the one thing that we are always aware of is ourselves. We are always aware, I am. So is that fundamental awareness, I am, that we need to attend to. But sometimes the trouble is that language is designed to talk about phenomena, about things other than ourselves. So language can be potentially misleading. So if, for example, if we say attend to ourself, it sounds like ourself is an object that we attend to. So rather than talking about attending to, I think it is clearer to talk about being attentive, being self-attentive. We're not attending to anything, we are just being self-attentive. Or another way of expressing it is, we are aware of so many things now, but the one thing that we are always aware of, the one constant in whatever else we may be aware of, we are always aware of ourselves. That self-awareness is always present. But though we are always self-aware, generally in waking and dream, we are negligently self-aware because we are more interested in attending to other things than in being self-attentive. So we are overlooking ourselves, we are overlooking our fundamental self-awareness and taking interest in things other than ourselves. Because of our interest in other things, we are neglecting the fundamental self-awareness which we really are. So we are always self-aware, but generally in waking and dream, we are negligently self-aware. So instead of being negligently self-aware, we need to be attentively self-aware. That is, we need to, our attention, which is so much interested in knowing other things, we need to cultivate that interest to know ourselves. We need to turn the light of our attention away from other things back towards ourselves. The attender, that which is attending, has to attend to itself. We ourselves have to attend to ourselves. So to my mind, it seems that talking about the practice, describing the practice as self-attentiveness or being self-attentive, or describing it as being attentively self-aware, that is the clearest description we can give in words. But words always, no words are entirely adequate. So we can really learn how to investigate ourselves by investigating ourselves. If you have never ridden a bicycle and you want to learn how to ride a bicycle, you can read books about riding bicycles. You can learn about the physics of balance, and you can learn about center of gravity and this and that. You can study so many things about riding a bicycle, but you still don't know how to ride a bicycle. You know, there's only one way to learn how to ride a bicycle. You have to get on a bicycle, wobble and fall off and get back on and wobble again until eventually you find how to balance on the cycle so that it doesn't wobble, so that it goes steadily. So it's only experience, it's only by trying, by trial and error, but we learn how to balance on a bicycle. Likewise, it's only by trial and error, but we will learn how to remain balanced in the state of self-attentiveness or attentive self-awareness. So we can learn the practice only by practicing. Bhagavan has given us plenty of clues, but we have to turn our attention away from other things, back towards ourselves. All these clues he's given us, but we can understand, we can grasp we can clearly grasp the meaning of these clues only by trying to put them into practice. The more we try to put them into practice, the clearer it will become. So that is one reason why Bhagavan called this path the path of investigation. Because in an investigation, you don't initially know where you're starting off from. Sorry. When you start off an investigation, you don't know where the investigation is going to lead you. As you proceed with the investigation, the way becomes more and more clear. So we have to, in that spirit of investigation, we have to start this practice of trying to turn our attention back towards ourselves. And what are we trying to achieve by turning our attention back towards ourselves? We are trying to see what we actually are. See means we're not going to see ourselves as an object. See is here used metaphorically. We are trying to know ourselves as we actually are. We're trying to be aware of ourselves as we actually are. So in order to see what we actually are, we need to look at ourselves. If you ask me, for example, how to see the midday sun, there's only one way to see the midday sun. You have to turn your eyes up and have a look at it. So it's by turning our look towards something that we see it. So we have to turn our inner look, the look of attention, back within towards ourselves to see what we actually are. This is as much as can be explained in words. Beyond this, we need to put it into practice, because only by practice it will become clear what the practice is. The more we practice it, the clearer it will become. And it's just like any investigation. As you proceed in an investigation, you learn more and more. But if we're investigating things about the world, what we are learning is information. If we're investigating faraway galaxies or something, or if we're investigating history or whatever we're investigating, as we go along, we gather more and more information. And the more information we have, the more focused our investigation is able to become. But there's no information to learn about ourselves. What we are gaining as we practice self-investigation is clarity, a clarity of self-awareness. So the more we investigate ourselves, the more clear, the greater the degree of clarity of self-awareness. So until such time as we attend to ourselves so keenly that we cease to be aware of anything else, our self-investigation is not perfect. It's still imperfect, but it is a process. The more we try to attend to ourselves, the greater the degree of clarity that will shine forth from within. Because what actually are we attending to? We are attending to ourselves, and we are the light of awareness that illumines all this. So since we are turning our attention back towards the original light, a light that illumines all light, even the physical light, how do we see physical light? Because of the light of awareness. So it's the awareness is the original light. It's not going to be, we're not going to see it like a physical light, but metaphorically, we can refer to awareness as a light. So we are turning our attention back towards that light of awareness. The more we attend to the light of awareness, which is our real nature, the more clarity we will get, the more clearly we will see it. So by proceeding on this path, we gain more and more clarity. And ultimately, we will lose ourselves in this clarity. That is the I. Who is it who starts this investigation? It's having risen as ego, we now mistake ourselves to be a body. So it's as ego that we need to investigate ourselves. So it's as ego that we begin this investigation. But the more we attend to ourselves, the more this ego will dissolve and lose its seeming substantiality. It actually has no substantiality, but because of our outward going attention, we seem to give a substantiality to this ego. The more we turn our attention within to investigate, who am I who have risen as this ego, the more ego will dissolve. and the greater and more clarity of self-awareness will shine forth. Ultimately, when we turn our attention, when we focus our attention so keenly on ourselves that we thereby cease to be aware of anything else, this ego, will be completely swallowed by the infinite clarity of pure awareness, which is our real nature. So that is the practice of self-investigation.
Good. Thank you, Michael. So Sadhu Woman in summary also talks about self-surrender or bhakti. Could you please explain self-surrender and
Yes.
how it relates to self-inquiry?
Right, okay. Bhagavan often said to people, there are two ways. Either investigate yourself and know what you actually are, or surrender yourself. Though Bhagavan sometimes presented these as two different paths, essentially they are one and the same. Why is this? Because when the path of self-surrender begins with bhakti, with devotion to God. The more we love God, the more we want to give ourselves to God. When bhakti begins from the people, when they first have belief in God, they believe God will, that if they please God, God will do for them what they want. In some religions, they even have idea that God is very angry. So you have to placate God, you have to please him, and then only he'll. So people start off with very crude ideas of God. But they basically, people, when they start off worshipping God, they're worshipping for some gain. They're not, they don't love God for his own sake. They love God for what they think they can get from God. Because we all have greatest love for ourselves. But as we proceed in the path, we eventually come to understand that God has, God has more love for us, and God is ready to do anything for us. And so the love for God grows, and we no longer seek to gain anything from God. We love God for the sake of God alone. So the more we love God, in a truly loving relationship, we can see this even in human relationships, say a husband and wife. If it's a truly loving relationship, they are not seeking what they can each gain from the other one. When love is mature love is not seeking to gain, it's seeking to give. So if we truly love a person, we will want to give ourselves to that person. To the extent that we want to give ourselves to that person, to that extent we truly love them. So in the path of devotion, the more we love God, the more we want to give ourselves wholly to God. The more we want to lose ourselves entirely in God. We want only God should exist and I should be gone. So that is when, as the Bhakti Marga develops, the self-surrender develops. When the true Bhakti Marga begins, that's not the Bhakti where we're asking God for this or that, because that's not love for God, that's love for the things we want from God. That's not true Bhakti. When the true Bhakti Marga begins is when we begin to love God for the sake of God. So when we begin to love God for the sake of God, we want to surrender. We start off trying to surrender our will to the will of God. So we all have so many likes, dislikes, desires, and everything. We understand these desires. Why should I desire anything when God knows better than I do what is good for me? So since God knows what is best for me, his will is better for me than my will. So let me surrender my will to God. So we start trying to surrender our will to God. This is how the path of surrender begins. And also, often it may be accompanied by, for example, renunciation, giving things up. We may be either in the form of doing charity to others, seeing God in others. We give them food, we give them clothing, we share our material resources. So that's an early stage of surrender. We may even give our time, devote our time to helping others, because we see God in others and we want to serve them. So we devote our time to that. These are all giving, slowly beginning to give. But the subtler giving than just giving material things is we understand our desires and attachments, our likes and dislikes. These are what are standing between us and God. So we want to give these up. So by the path of bhakti, we can, to some extent, we can reduce the strength of our desires and attachments by surrendering, instead of always thinking about what I want, what does God want? So not my will, but thy will. Ninishtam anishtam, as Bhagavan said in Arunachala Patikam, your will is my will. Imbadakut, that itself is happiness for me. So so we don't want anything other than what God wants for us. So we try to surrender our will to God. But though we can, to a great extent, by bhakti, we can to a considerable extent reduce the strength of our desires and attachments. So long as we remain as a separate individual, as an ego, we will have some desires and attachments, because desire and attachment is the very nature of ego. Ego comes into existence by grasping this body. So at least we want the life to continue in this body. So how to make the surrender, how to surrender our will completely to God? We cannot surrender our will completely without surrendering the one who has the will, the one whose will it is, that is ego. So that is why surrender ultimately leads to self-surrender. That means giving ourselves to God. We want to give ourselves to God. Because only when we give ourselves to God do we lose ourselves in God, and God alone remains. So that is the state of union with God, or aikya, oneness with God, or whatever people call it. So that is what the devotee is seeking to attain. But how to surrender this ego to God? As Bhagavan explained very clearly what is the nature of ego. The nature of ego, we rise as ego by grasping other things. That means that we rise as ego by turning our attention outwards and being aware of other things. Grasping means, it doesn't mean grasping by our hand. When Bhagavan talks about ego grasping, he describes ego as a formless phantom. Uruvatrapeya hande, the formless phantom ego, comes into existence by grasping form. So how does a formless phantom grasp form? We grasp by our awareness. So it's by our attention to things other than ourselves, but we are grasping them. So we come into existence as ego by being aware of things other than ourselves. So long as we are aware of things other than ourselves, so long as we attend to things other than ourselves, we are sustaining our existence as ego. So even if we are worshipping God as something other than ourselves, we are still thereby sustaining ego. We cannot surrender ourselves completely to God so long as we see God as other than ourselves. So, but the nature of ego is to come into existence, to stand and to flourish by grasping things other than itself, by grasping forms. But if it turns its attention back towards itself, it has nothing to hold on to, no form to hold on to, so it subsides. That's why Bhagavan says in that same verse 25 of Rupanapta, in which he says, grasping form, it comes into existence, grasping form, it stands, grasping and feeding on forms, it flourishes greatly. Uruvittu urupatram, leaving one form, it grasps another form. Tedinal otum pidicum, means if sought, it takes flight. That is the nature of ego. We seem to be ego so long as we are looking at anything other than ourselves. When we look back at ourselves, where is there any ego? We don't find any such thing. As Bhagavan says, it takes flight. It disappears. So we seem to be ego only so long as we're looking outside. When we turn our attention back within, ego thereby dissolves and subsides back into its source. So, so long as we are attending to anything other than ourselves, we are sustaining ego. When we turn our attention back towards ourselves, ego subsides. So how are we to surrender this ego? Very simply, by turning our attention towards it. That is why Bhagavan has described what it has defined what is giving oneself to God or surrendering oneself to God in the first sentence of the 13th paragraph of Nana. There, what he says is, Anma chintane tavira, vera chintane kalambavadaku satram idum kodamal, atmanishta paranai irupade, tanai isiluku alipadam. What that means is, Anma chintane tavira. That means accept Atma Chintana. Atma Chintana literally means thought of oneself. But that's a way of saying self-attentiveness. So accept self-attentiveness. Vera Chintane Kalambavadaku Satram Idum Kadamo. Not giving even the slightest room to arise of any thought other than self-attentiveness. Atmanishta Paranai Irupte, being as Atmanishta Para means one who is firmly established as oneself. That alone is Tanne Isanaku Aripadam. That is giving oneself to God. That is the whole sentence means being Atmanishta Param, one who is completely fixed in and as oneself, giving not even the slightest room to the rising of any thought other than self-attentiveness, alone is giving oneself to God. That is, other thoughts rise when we allow our attention to go away from ourselves. With no thought can rise unless we're there to attend to it. Thoughts arise in our awareness. So only when we're aware of them can thoughts rise. When our attention is turned back towards ourselves, there's no scope for any thoughts to rise. That's why Bhagavan says, giving not even the slightest room for rising of any thought other than self-attentiveness. So we have to attend to ourselves so keenly, but no other thought can rise. That is giving ourselves to God. So ultimately, surrender, though the path of surrender can begin before the path of self-investigation, the path of surrender can be completed, we can achieve its culmination, its fulfillment, only by self-investigation. So ultimately, self-investigation and self-surrender are one and the same thing. That is one way of explaining it. That is from the bhakti perspective. If we take it from the self-investigation perspective, supposing we're not interested in God, we've got no faith in God, no belief in God, we're not interested in God, I only want to know what I am. Sometimes if people came to Bhagavan and said, why God isn't doing this or that for me, Bhagavan said, if you believe God, surrender to him. If you don't believe him, investigate yourself. So it's not even, Bhagavan didn't even insist that we should believe in God. It's not necessary to believe in anything. Bhagavan often used to say, do not believe what you do not know. So all we know for sure is I am. So that is what we should investigate. So supposing we are of such a mentality, we're not interested in God or all these ideas. We only want to know who am I. In order to, the more we attend to ourselves, we cannot attend to ourselves without thereby giving up ego. Because the more keenly we attend to ourselves, the more ego subsides and dissolves back into its source. So we cannot investigate ourselves without surrendering ourselves. So whether we see it from a bhakti perspective or a jnana perspective, ultimately self-investigation and self-surrender are one and the same. We cannot even begin to investigate ourselves without thereby, to some extent, surrendering ourselves. Because when we turn our attention back towards ourselves, we are letting go of everything else. We're trying to hold on to ourselves and let go of everything else. So we are at least to some extent surrendering our desire and attachment for other things in order to attend to ourselves. So there can be no self-investigation without surrender. And the deeper our investigation goes, the more we are surrendering ourselves. So ultimately, self-investigation and self-surrender are one and the same path. They may be approached from two different angles, but the path is one and the same. And for those of us who have understood Bhagavan's teachings and understood the oneness of self-investigation and self-surrender, we won't have any problem with the concept of God. We'll be very comfortable, because ultimately, what is God? As Bhagavan said, God is your own real nature. God is what is shining in you as I am. So we don't even, we've got no problem. We've got no arguments with the atheists, because what the atheists are denying is certain concepts of God. No atheist will deny I am. Everyone has to, in order to be an atheist, I am an atheist. So there must be an I there to be an atheist. So even the atheist believes in I. And so according to Bhagavan, there's no such thing as an atheist, because for Bhagavan, I alone is God. There's no God other than I. So, and there's no I other than God. So it's all these arguments about theism, atheism, and everything. These all become irrelevant if we understand Bhagavan's teachings. So we will be equally when Bhagavan expresses his teaching both in the language of jnana and in the language of bhakti, we will feel equally comfortable with both. We'll feel comfortable with Arunachasthuti Panchakam. Bhagavan seems to be worshipping a mountain as God. But if we understand what the inner meaning of those verses, we'll see that there's no contradiction between that and this path of self-investigation, which is the most logical and, which is based on the most logical, rational, inquiring, investigating, questioning. This is part of investigation, of questioning everything. As I said, Bhagavan often used to say, do not believe what you do not know. So Bhagavan doesn't want us to accept anything on mere belief. He wants us to investigate and find out what is real. And what is real? Only ourselves. What we actually are, that alone is real, according to Bhagavan. So to know what is real, we need to know ourselves.